Broadcasting from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 20, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome to The Gaily Show, the only daily LGBTQ radio news and talk show in the United States. I am your host, John Parker. It is Friday, and we reserve this day of the week to talk about LGBTQ culture and entertainment because queer authors, filmmakers, musicians are one of the most censored group of artists in the United States, so we want to take that time every week to highlight their excellent work and to celebrate them. On the show today, in the second half hour, Mike Player explores the queer Western frontier in his new Western, Utopia, which drops September 19th. We'll be talking to Mike all about it. But up first, the new novel Girl Next Door came out this week. Its author is Rachel Meredith. Born in New York City, raised on Long Island, and now a New Havener, Rachel spends her days as a copy editor and proofreader. Girl Next Door is her debut adult rom-com, and she joins us now. Rachel, welcome to The Gaily Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
And congratulations, publication week. It's here.
It's here. It's so weird.
Well, it is delightful. I'm holding up the book here for our YouTube watchers. Girl Next Door. Really lovely cover, too. I hope you're happy with it. I know that authors don't get to have all the says about the covers, but when I opened it, I was like, ooh, this is nice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm totally happy with it. And it was actually a surprisingly painless process with my publisher to go through like just a couple of drafts of the cover before we settled on this one, and the whole team was involved. It was really good. They had great thoughts about the color palette, and every sort of element of the cover has its explanation or relationship to the story, and I just was totally impressed. Like, it looks good, yay.
But it also works on two levels, because there's your book and then there's the book within a book of Girl Next Door. So tell us, it's a very interesting setup. What can folks expect when they turn to page one?
Well, the book sort of dives right into the premise that you would read about on the back cover, which is that a freelance writer, 20-somethings, living in New York City, finds out from her best friend who runs a really popular gossip website, basically, that this best-selling rom-com called Girl Next Door, written by somebody with a pen name, seems to be about her, or rather about her senior year in high school with her next-door neighbor from childhood, who she did not have any sort of close relationship with in high school, and yet there's all these details in the book that match up with the time that they all had together. So she gets sent back home undercover to write an expose about her childhood next door neighbor, who's a mysterious and prickly person who works at a library.
Jawbreaker, by the way, excellent title for a.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I made up lots of titles of publications within the book. So
that was my favorite. And what I like about this setup is that we've all wondered, what would it be like if our high school crushes turn out to, well, A, be queer, and B, secretly pine for us all their lives. But here it's wait a minute, this friend, they're this friend, really? They're the one that was into me? Wild. Talk to me about how that setup came to be, because this is not the standard for a rom-com.
Yeah, no, I definitely wanted to play with expectations from the reader. And, when I think about writing and the books that I love the best, I always think about how they challenge sort of whatever expectations I'm bringing into something. So in this case, I was thinking a lot about tropes, a lot about, sort of the familiar storylines that we get in rom-com. And something just struck me as inherently funny about somebody who's, kind of like the bad girl in high school who is, she doesn't need anybody. She wears all black. She's really tough. Being this person who actually is has this, soft heart and is writing this fluffy rom-com about somebody that she otherwise, seemed to not even be interested in at all. But as you get into the book, you see that memories, especially of high school, can be very flawed. And so part of the suspense of the book and also the romance of the book is about seeing that, your perceptions at that age can, are really off, really off base, and sometimes in a very good way.
Right. So there's this funny trope about the queers wanting to go back to high school reunions to win them.
Yeah.
When I think of the HBO show The Other Two, there's this whole great musical number about going back to a high school reunion to win it. But talk to me about the idea of going home and diving into what happened in high school and like our perceptions of it, and like, well, wait, isn't that what happened? I think that's what happened, and the feelings of that, because they're very big feelings from high school. So talk to me about
Yeah.
that writing process of it and how you wanted to kind of subvert that and sort of pick it apart.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in early stages of drafting the book, I had this experience that I was thinking about, which was that, I mean, I was in the closet in high school, and, you know, many, many years later, a teacher that I had been close with asked me to come back and be part of this like alumni panel for the GSA at the school. And things had just changed a lot. Like, not only that, you know, every single alumni who was asked to come back was not out while we were there, but also that when we did get back, yeah, it was really interesting how there would have been a support community there, but nobody sort of wanted to step forward and be the first one to, you know, get the tomatoes thrown at them or whatever it happened to be. And I was thinking about that a lot, and sort of about this, like, not that it isn't real, that homophobia occurs all over the place, especially when you're a teenager. And especially, you know, in the era and the place where I went to high school, but that we didn't think to sort of like trust each other with secrets, or with our deeper selves, you know, that some of that was just like a more universal unsteadiness about being a person that you experience when you're a teenager. And this sort of seemed to me like, yeah, a more universal or a bigger thing going on that I wanted to touch on in the book. So the finished book actually doesn't have a coming out story in it. That ended up getting edited out a little bit. And the focus was more on how it's a coming out sort of emotionally for the main character, with all of these people from her past, her brother who she stays with, her brother's wife, who was actually her secret high school crush. And then, of course, the love interest, her childhood next door neighbor, who still lives next door to the house where she grew up. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was a big part of why I framed it the way that I did.
It's also interesting, like the crushes that we think were so secret that weren't.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to be able to laugh at yourself. A lot of the book is about making the characters sort of making fun of themselves as younger people.
I also, something that I liked about the novels, how the main character MC really relishes culture, and a very like opening chapter returning to a very specific author for processing a breakup. You have mentioned a lot of times the Matrix rather, it comes up a lot in terms of, you know, viewing. There's X-Men that shows up in there. I think there's one point where they're binging Arrested Development. This all felt very humanizing to me. Can you talk to me about this idea of comfort culture? I guess I would say comfort movies, comfort books, and how we use them to help process these, you know, big events that we're living through.
Yeah, I mean, I think, speaking personally, those specific sources, you know, were things that I loved when I was a teenager and that I still enjoy a lot as an adult. And I also think that they're very, like, overtly and also maybe covertly queer coded. Even though they had this big cultural mainstream also. There's actually, you know, in the book, the Matrix, there are a lot more Matrix jokes. In the first draft, my editor was like, we need to like slim this down a little. There's a lot of Matrix talk, and there may very well be readers who have never seen the Matrix, which was so alarming to me to hear. But fair enough. But yeah, there's a scene where the main character and Nora, who, you know, is her love interest, they go to see a replay of The Matrix at their local movie theater. And there's a very, very brief moment in there where MC sort of reflects on how The Matrix was something that was made by queer filmmakers. It had a lot of queer content in it. And yet it became this massive cultural phenomenon where, you know, people at the time were not talking about its queerness at all. And what an interesting dynamic that is, that something that's on the fringes and on the edge, just sort of at the right time or with the right sort of level of awareness of the moment, becomes the center of culture and creates culture. And I've always been interested in that. And I think writing queer rom-coms myself, when queer stories within the romance category are sort of having like an explosive moment over the last few years after a long time of not being there, at least in traditional publishing. It's pretty wild to sort of think about like how, the energy behind this book from the publisher is to like bring it into the mainstream basically. Mm-hmm. And that it wouldn't have happened like that 10 years ago, or even maybe 5 years ago. Yeah.
No. I'm having lots of thoughts about that. First of all, speaking of the Matrix, really, I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, but it blows my mind.
No, let's go.
That MAGA has adopted the Matrix and the red pill, blue pill. And I'm like, you all did not understand that movie at all. I don't know what y'all are doing, but anyway, that's a different topic for a different show. But
they're always co-opting. They're always co-opting our stuff.
Always.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting kind of critique of the industry that you've got going on there, because you've got so many different layers of you've got the viewpoint of Jawbreaker, the magazine, and what their kind of pressures of what they feel that they need to do to keep Jawbreaker going. Then you've got Nora's book, which actually starts as fan fiction, and then she's just sort of writing on the internet, and then an editor finds it and goes, do you want a book deal? And then it kind of like also goes from there into other avenues of opportunity. And I've got that's a big question, and I'm coming up on a hard break here. So we're going to hold that thought.
I'm holding it.
I'm going to ask you about the industry and your take on it as you were writing this as your debut novel, Girl Next Door. We are talking with Rachel Meredith. Her new novel debut rom-com came out this week. We are going to take a break here. But before we do, I want to share about our travel partner, Travel Marquette. And the reason why is that Marquette, Michigan has become a very special place for me. For the past decade, I have been traveling to Marquette twice a year. And part of the reason why I love it is that I don't have to worry about being queer while traveling to Marquette. It is a university town. It is a super blue city and a reliably blue county in Michigan's gorgeous Upper Peninsula. And it has a very active Pride organization. And Marquette has become so many things to me, what I need in a long weekend getaway: good restaurants, excellent bookstores, relaxing hiking, time out in nature, delicious bakeries. I've already been there once this year covering Pride. I'm headed back this October, and I'm really grateful to be in partnership with Travel Marquette right now because the world sucks, and it's great to travel to a place where I can just be myself. So if this is something that you would like to do, you can head to travelmarquette.com to start your journey. Travelmarquette.com. You're listening to The Gaily Show. We will be back after this short break. Welcome back to The Gaily Show. I am John Parker. We are coming up on the bottom of the hour when an awkward friend from high school writes a steamy novel about being in love with you under a pen name. What do you do? That's what debut novelist Rachel Meredith explores in her new rom-com, Girl Next Door. Gorgeous cover. Holding it up there for our folks on YouTube. Rachel, before the break, I was asking a huge question about the literary industry, right? You've got these folks working for Jawbreaker, which is a sort of gossip online mag. You've got an author, Nora, who's writing originally just for fan fiction on the internet. This gets picked up then by an editor to turn into a novel that she writes under a pen name so that people don't know her identity. What were you exploring there in the literary industry?
That's a great question, and the big question. I think I was, we touched on this a little bit before when we were talking about like culture in general and the Matrix, and sort of, I am really interested in this dynamic between like the mainstream and the fringe, especially when it comes to queer culture and queer narratives. You know, on the one hand, there's a lot to critique about the way like capitalistic industries have taken queer stories and queer content, for nefarious purposes, or maybe just, morally questionable purposes. Then again, queer stories entering culture and entering the mainstream is how we have changes at the larger level. When I think back to being in high school, or even like by the time I was graduated from college, it still wasn't, gay marriage was only in select states. It wasn't in the state that I was in with my partner, who's now my wife. We were able to get married. We have kids now. These are all just totally unthinkable things to me, being this I don't know, normie, I guess, for lack of a better word. And the fact that those things are accessible to me now, even as they are, let's admit it, under threat at times, is amazing. And I think a lot of that has to do with people being exposed to queer stories and queer culture. So yeah, I think in showing the love interest character, Nora, as somebody who both, you know, sort of uses the internet and her significant writing skills to benefit herself. You know, she's also, yeah, kind of a rebel, and she has a lot of negative things to say about the industry. And I sort of like the way she's both criticizing it and using it. So I think if I had to say, I think her attitudes are the closest to my own sort of ideas about the industry. Though again, you know, I'm being published by a large traditional publisher. I have a queer editor. My agent is queer. You know, it's been a phenomenal experience from start to finish. Like, even the imprint that I'm on has been so supportive, and yeah, I truly have no complaints. I've had a great experience. So I know that that's not necessarily true for all authors through all time, but for myself, I feel very grateful, and I know that you know, we're out there, we're in there, wherever you look.
I'm here with Rachel Meredith, whose debut novel, Girl Next Door, came out just this week. We've got links in the show notes and on our website for you to order your own copy. As you're saying that, you're reminding me that there was some data that came out a year ago or a couple years ago that was saying that queer fiction has actually been holding up sales in the industry. Specifically, it was male romance, because apparently a lot of cis straight white women love reading.
So I've heard.
And that has been keeping up industry sales. And then also to see these major, you know, the big five going into these red states and suing them for, you know, banning LGBTQ books is like, really 10 years ago, 15 years ago, for sure, would they have been going out on the line and spending for lawyers to do that? It is definitely a different environment that we are operating in. And part of that, and there's a scene about this in the book, where libraries as sites of conflict. Can you talk about how you wanted to approach a particular scene where there are protesters? There's a whole grooming narrative outside of a particular library, MC's hometown library, I guess Nora's too. Talk to me about what you wanted to show in writing that, because it's top of mind for everybody right now, particularly queer authors and readers.
Yeah, and when I was drafting the book, and certainly like when I was turning everything in to my publisher, it was before the election or anything like that. But I think as a person in my 30s, I'll never quite fully let go of the suspicions that I have that whatever we've achieved, you know, could be under threat, could be tenuous. And I think part of that was what influenced me to say, I feel like I need to have a scene like this where we acknowledge that even though, you know, so many good things are happening and people are so supportive of queer people and people of all kinds in this book. And I think that's part of romance and rom-com, you know, in my section, I guess, of that category. The positivity and good vibes really comes with the territory. That's part of what people want, is to bask in that sort of, not utopic, but, you know, the sunny version of reality. And I think that's completely fair and appropriate and good, and we deserve to have those things. However, it just felt important to me as a storyteller to have one sort of scene, and it's a scene that's left really open-ended as to what the implications of it are for the characters, or, you know, for the world of the book at large, where you see that not everybody is happy that queer content or queer stories are celebrated or lucrative or what have you, and that there is a real negativity and resistance to that. It may be just a few people, it may be tons of people, and in the case of this book, I think it's something like I said, there were like 3 protesters in front of Nora, the librarian, in front of her library protesting her book. And they don't have like a proper altercation. You know, it's a rom-com. It's still supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be light. And I wanted to keep it that way. But yeah, that was my sort of acknowledgement, I guess, that even as we make this progress and it should be celebrated and it should be languished in, it didn't feel quite right to leave out this sort of a shadow that sort of falls over this stuff in the distance, or sometimes not in the distance.
I appreciated how you navigated that, right? Like there's the Dan Levy's of like, Schitt's Creek, which is like, I'm not having any of that here.
Yep.
That none of that is part of this world where I'm like, yes, finally.
Yeah, it's
But
great. It's great to do that too.
yeah, but I liked how you handled that, the mix of that. It was sort of like nodding, like this is a thing.
Yeah.
This isn't the focus of this novel, but it is a thing. We're coming up on the end of our time here. I just want to very briefly, if you can share about that, writing the complexities of reconnecting with someone from high school in a romantic sense.
Yeah, the story really took so much editing. I made many failed attempts at exactly what the dynamic should be between the two characters. But I think the main thing that I was interested in and wanted to get across in the chemistry between the main character and Nora is that the ability to be honest with other people, like, that has so much romance in it. Oops, I dropped my headphone. Yeah, that has so much romance in it and so much chemistry. So, everything cool with my headphones?
Yes, no, you're good. I thank you. That's a great concluding thought for our time today. The novel is Girl Next Door. We have links in our show notes and on our website for you to get your own copy. And you can connect with Rachel at her website, rachelmeredithauthor.com. Also on Instagram as @RachelMeredithWrites. Rachel, thank you for joining us here on The Gaily Show.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
We'll be back after this break. Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk where facts matter. Welcome back to The Gaily Show. I am your host, John Parker. It is 33 minutes after the hour. In 1856, a gay gunslinger, a lesbian doctor disguised as a man, a boy pulp fiction writer, and a wannabe assassin become mismatched colleagues in search of the fabled town of Utopia. Written by Mike Player, Utopia will be available as an ebook starting September 19th. Mike is a comedy writer, actor, and author. He is the creator and executive producer of MTV's Logo Network series, The Outlaugh Festival on Wisecrack. He is the editor, and contributor to Out on the Edge, America's Rebel Comics, published by Allison Books. He's published the comedy suspense novels Viral, the story of the milkshake girl, and Hyperloop to Hell. Mike, welcome to The Gaily Show.
Hi, John. It's great to be here.
All right. Gay gunslinger, lesbian doctor disguised as a man, wannabe assassin, boy pulp fiction writer. Tell us about Utopia as we get ready to read it on September 19th.
I think it's probably close to being a gay Shane, if you're familiar with Shane. And it might be near the Hatfields and the McCoys. Aren't they? They're the legendary adversaries, and then probably some Oregon Trail thrown in there. And so it's basically four misfits led by a gay gunslinger who was closeted in New York, having a closeted love affair with a senator, and was outed, as they used to do, and his name was published in the papers. And the senator sends a assassin after him when my lead character leaves New York to make sure he doesn't talk. And so that's where we have the assassin. Along the way, they hold Presbyterians hostage. They hold up an oddball kind of stagecoach that get caught in a tornado, and towards the end they reach Utopia, which is a queer community in the West, which they actually had these kinds of communities in the Wild West. People think that our time is that we're the most progressive time in the world, or we used to be, but it turns out there were lots of pockets of progressivity in the past, including when the West was being settled. People went out there to start these alternative communities, like the Mormons at the time, etc. So I just thought, and there were lots of queer people going out west because we always do that. We're always the people that volunteer to take these adventures. We're always the pirates, and we're always out west. And so I thought Utopia, that's where there should be a community for us that we try to start. And so the characters get out there eventually, and then there's a war, sort of a war between the Utopia citizens and the ranch that runs the valley, the evil Wunderfart ranch. And and so they fight for their lives and they fight for their loves, and that's Utopia.
So I was going to ask about that. Like, how much of this, in terms of history, right? So, like, were there specific, like, okay, so we know that there were, I'm learning this now, that there were the queer towns in Western United States at the time. And were there specific points, like, was Utopia modeled on a particular city? This is where I'm headed. Was there a particular, like, senator that had a relationship with somebody? Or were these just sort of like things that you're like, we know these happened, and I'm sort of putting it here together in this comedy historical fiction?
No, I took a lot of liberty. I don't even think that there were actually, I mean, to my knowledge, towns like what I've created. But I do know, if you've seen photos from the West, those, they would have dances where there were no women around. So the men would dance with each other. Mm-hmm. And a lot of straight guys were doing that. But they're, the gay guys are out there. And I'm just giving voice. And then also the lesbians were, out there in all sorts of capacities. There really were women dressed as men, as rangers and backwoods people. So those sorts of things really happen. But I don't think there was a full-on town. But maybe there was, and I just don't know. The senator wasn't based on anybody. But let's face it, there must have been lots of that. They would publish people's names.
I'm thinking of a current senator right now who is forcing people to sign NDAs. Who is that senator from South Carolina?
Gosh, I don't know. Let's not get on any hate lists right now. Let's stay under the radar.
Let's keep our FCC license. But as you're talking about that, I'm reminded of a Nelly Ben. She is a French physicist, I guess you could say, and she has this theory that queer people should be the first ones to go back to the moon or travel out into space because we just understand what it's like to live in and outside of society, and so we're the ones that are best understanding of what it means to go out into unknown territory. And as you're saying that, now I'm like, you mentioning earlier, I'm like, yeah, queer people, we know what it's like to be out there and to be outlaws, but also how to create society and to create these areas that are inclusive of everybody. And so I think it's, great that you are exploring all of that and doing that through a comedy lens. So I'm curious, you have obviously a lot of, you do a lot of comedy and organizing and writing and TV and doing stand-up. Talk to me about writing comedy in the age of MAGA 2.0.
Wow, yeah, it's different. I mean, first of all, in terms of writing comedy, I've learned that the different genres require different skills. Like, you can't just be a stand-up comedian and write a novel because one-liners get exhausting, right? So I learned that, you have to give pockets of reality to the fiction in order to make it fly. And then we went through a period when I was doing the Gay Mafia and Outlaugh, which was now about 15 years ago, where it was different. It was this kind of Logo was on the, Logo was this new queer network everybody was so excited by. And there was this kind of like a wave of, we've arrived feeling going around and the marriage equality protesting and all of that. But now we're back to, sort of, I think, asserting ourselves and being militant. And that militant thing, I think, has come back. Perhaps it's shaking us out of our, maybe we got a little too, calm about everything once we got marriage. I don't know, but so now I think it just has to be more in your face. I just think we just really have to, be bold, and because we're risking more now. It's awful. I mean, but we've always been in this place. We're not unused to being in this situation. I will say that the Gay Mafia and Outlaw, when I was doing them, were liberating for me personally, because it was great to write comedy from a queer perspective in a large, having large audiences that weren't just, niche, and gaining acceptance that way and for me personally, I hadn't had that experience. So it was, oh my God, it was a real great time as a writer and an artist. I was fortunate to get to go through that, because I almost healed a lot of wounds. I won't say wounds are ever healed 100%, but wow, anyway, I'm going off. But like, all the audiences were very thrilling to get to meet. So
I'm curious what drew you to using your comedy writing skills to a Western.
This Utopia really began as a sketch in the Gay Mafia show called Frontier Gay Bar Shootout. It was that I just loved. I wrote it, and it was basically that. There was a sheriff who was a woman dressed as a man who was, and then there was all the different kinds of representations of queer identity, and it was just shuffled all together. And they were fighting against each other because there was a cheating mountain man and accusations. And we had a character called Lesbia Bandita, who was she was this bandit. And anyway, it was a lot of fun, and the audiences loved it. And I thought, I love that world. I thought I want to go back to that world, but I can't really use the sketch, like I said before, the genre technique of sketch writing in a novel. So I thought I'll just use the world, repopulate it with, characters that have deeper backstories and legs to talk about, because it was just so much fun. I thought, just think, where do these people come from? Why are they out there? It was just, so yeah, it had its origin story from a sketch, which I just love that idea.
I didn't know that connection, and I love that's how this particular novel got started. I would consider myself a baby writer. I just do essays right now, but whenever I'm getting into something, I think, okay, I'm like, oh, this is where I want this essay to go, and I'm like, oh, I had no idea that's what I thought about something, or this is not something I was expecting to suddenly be talking about or writing about in here. Was there something like that for you in writing Utopia, where you got into it and you're like, here's a whole thing that is surprising me right now?
Yeah, actually, because getting back to that whole, genre format thing, deepening some of the characters, like initially it was like, a gay gunslinger who was in a closeted relationship with a senator. That's got a lot of comedy humor in it. But then I thought, wow, this guy's been in the closet. He's been used. He's been betrayed. I mean, the novel's really about betrayal and finding your own authenticity. It's about making a new start with yourself, but it's also about the corrosive effects of repression and the squelching of your spirit. And so I realized I had those things going on, and the main character, if he was going to be a main character, better have some kind of depth. So yeah, he's troubled. He acts out in the beginning. He expresses his sexuality in ways that may not be healthy, and he's got some drug issues. But it's just, he starts to find himself as he goes along this journey to Utopia. So yeah, that I did discover, because I didn't envision that being, and also the lesbian character who dresses as a man. I found that she has more of an interest in the clothing and the cross. I mean, the identifying as a man beyond just being in disguise. And I thought, well, that's really interesting too. And I let that happen. Yeah, that's fun. It's like your essay writing in the sense that when you write a novel, that you can, if you're lucky, you discover things that you didn't know were in there. And that's really one of the thrills, I guess, of writing.
Well, you are a very accomplished writer, way more than I am. And I'm here with Mike Player, whose upcoming comedy Western novel, Utopia, drops September 19th. You're bringing up the clothing there, and I've got just under a minute here before I have to hit a hard break. But I do want to ask you, when we come back from that, of how you were thinking about writing queer expression during that particular time period, because it was very different. So you have one character who's cross-dressing. You've got other characters who are very, I don't want to describe them. I want you to describe them when we come back. So we are going to take that break. We're going to have more with Mike when we come back. You can keep the conversation going on Blue Sky. We are at thegayleyshow.org on Blue Sky, where you can follow us for more progressive news and analysis. You can also keep up to date with more progressive news at heartlandsignal.com with our friends at WCPT 820. You are listening to The Gailey Show on AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am John Parker. We are already coming up on the top of the hour. Taking Presbyterians hostage, riding a tornado with a Mormon wagon train, and robbing an offbeat stagecoach are just some of the events in Mike Player's upcoming novel, Utopia. Mike, before the break, big question that I was starting to ask you, which is about how did you approach writing queer expression and how the characters were deciding to do that or don't do that? Like, you have a lesbian character who is a doctor, but also very interested, in using cross-dressing. You've got other characters who are, navigating how they're going to express their queerness. Talk to us about how you wanted to approach that in your novel, Utopia.
Well, I guess I kind of did it in a more contemporary way because it does need to be, there is humor, and there's in some places, a lot of humor. So the characters, frankly, back then, everybody was just in the closet. You just had to pass was your safety net. And, so once we got to Utopia and I had characters in Utopia living their out lives, that was a little different. But initially, yeah, there was, in New York, I had the lead character with the senator in a society where there was coded communication at social events, where, winks and nods and all these sort of communications. But very, I did do some research on it, and I love history anyway, but back then it was a very oppressive time. Even though there were lots of gay people, there was still, they published your name in the paper, and that went on for like decades. And even just the accusation, women, I think, were less scrutinized because women were given less, cash. They were like, they weren't valued as much in society, so they weren't paid attention to as much, but they, and there were a lot of women passing as men. The character that I have was passing as a man in order to be a doctor. She wanted to be a doctor, and you couldn't do that as a woman. I think that was pretty much it. And I know a lot about being in the closet because I grew up in that world, the 60s and 70s, and it's a lot of fun, the closet.
I'm curious, Were there any old Western jokes that you found from back then that you incorporated into the novel?
No, I didn't find any old Western jokes. I had a lot of fun, not mocking, but coming up with names of ranch hands and on my own, and things. There's a lot. I had a lot of fun with it, which is how I know I'm going to write a book. If it's fun for me as a writer, and fun meaning really, really interesting, then I'm going to enjoy it. And they always tell you this, but it's true. It comes out in your writing, I think. The reader will pick up on the fact that you're enjoying yourself. If it's a slog and tedious, but no specific, although, something I did do a lot, I did read about, we had a president, Harrison, is it Harrison, before the one guy that came before Lincoln? I think it's Harrison, who was rumored to be gay, and they used to, because he had no wife. And
Really?
they used to, and the Congress people, before, they had their meetings and so forth, would say, they used to call him something like, something akin to like, oh, here comes Mary and her wife or something, but it wasn't Mary, it was something specific. So there was a lot of like, everybody knew that somebody was gay, so there was hetero coding as well. Oh yeah, no, look it up. He was probably the one pretty sure gay president.
Lincoln was.
Yeah.
Lincoln was. There's an amazing documentary that came out a year ago, Lincoln Lover of Men, and they lay out all of the historical research, and it's not, it's obvious. You're just like, why have we been hiding this for over 100 years? It's
George Washington. I've read some stuff about, not as much, but there's been some talk.
Yeah.
About George.
This is gonna be a whole conversation
yeah.
about our gay presidents. But you were talking about, you can tell when you're enjoying, a reader can tell when an author is really enjoying writing a particular book, and I absolutely got that sense reading Utopia. I'm curious, for you, without doing any plot spoilers, was there a particular either character or section that you just found to be an absolute riot to write?
Well, I could mention characters that were really fun to write for, and one of them was Gretchen Wunderfart, who was this. She was this matron in the ranch that was oppressing the people of Utopia, and all she wanted was her father's approval. Who he was evil, and he always loved her sister more than he loved her, and so she was lots of fun. And then one of the whores that lived in Utopia, I have some whores, and one of them was a lot of fun. Some of his clients were really fun. Yeah, so I enjoyed some of the characters. Sometimes they're just so easy to they just come alive, and that stuff.
Well, the book is Utopia. We have links in our show notes and on our website about how you can get your very own copy ebook when it comes out on September 19th. You can connect with Mike at mikeplayer.net. He's also on Instagram and TikTok as @author Mike Player. Mike, this has been such a delight. Thank you for joining us here on The Gaily Show.
Thank you, John. I had a lot of fun. It's been great.
Congratulations on the book. It is it is a riot.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening and or watching today. You can keep the gay going all weekend long. On Saturday afternoon is Pride on AM 950. You can catch up with the best of The Gaily Show at 2 p.m. Twin Cities Pride Amplified is at 3 p.m. The Legal Trans Woman is at 4 p.m. And the afternoon rounds out with the Downright Upright Show with Philip Anthony at 5 p.m. 4 hours of the most comprehensive Minnesota and national LGBTQ news on the radio and in podcasts. On Sunday at 11 a.m., tune in to WCPT for Out Chicago. It's Sunday brunch with your gay best friends, Ellen Miller and Scott Duff on WCPT 820. Have a great weekend, everybody. And until Monday, keep it queer, America.